Hello and welcome, guys. We're here for match 5 of the current league. I do have some bad news, however. The original recording for this, the audio was completely destroyed. It was really hard to listen to, and in addition to some other issues with the video, I figured that it probably would make sense to go ahead and re-record this one as a playback. So, as you know, if you've been following my channel, it's definitely not my preference to do videos in this style, but that is what we are going with today. Obviously, for the next league, it'll return back to normal. But yeah, for this one, this is how it's going to be. And if you're interested in details of the deck list, as per usual, go ahead and watch match 1, where you'll find everything about this deck list that you see on screen. This is, in fact, the list that was played for this particular matchup. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and look at game 1. So, luckily for us, we end up on the play, which is always good news, especially in match 5. And we are greeted with the following hand. Now, usually in hands like this, the biggest glaring thing that's missing is a Titan. Sometimes you can rely on top decking into a Primeval Titan or Summoner's Pact. In this case, Tolaria West would not work because we don't really have any blue sources. But the other issue is that we also don't have an untapped green source to play Grazer on one. So that means that the earliest we're playing this Grazer is with the Sanctuary after it is untapped on turn 3. That's just way too slow. So we end up having to ship this particular hand back. And the hand we get is the following. So this hand has the untapped green source, and it has Titan mana. In fact, we could put back, say, Boros Garrison and keep all the other lands. We'll be able to have Titan on turn 4 if we draw it, but this hand doesn't have any early acceleration. It doesn't have like an Explorer or an Amulet or a Grazer to kind of help speed it along its way. And on top of that, it also doesn't have a Titan. So I could, in hindsight, see potentially keeping this, since going to 5 could potentially be worse than the hand that we have here. But anyways, I do, in fact, mulligan, and I don't think that's necessarily a wrong decision. So let's see what we get on 5 cards. So this is the 5-card hand that we are greeted with. Admittedly, it's not particularly good. There's no acceleration whatsoever. But you just can't really afford to mull to less than 5, maybe? I don't know. Perhaps we could have mulliganed this hand and see what we could find. I guess we could potentially find, like, untapped land, Amulet, bounce land, and a 3-drop on 4 cards and hope to top deck land into Titan, and that might still work. But knowing that we are in the blind, in other words, not knowing what our opponent is playing, it's a little hard to throw away a hand that has Titan already. In fact, we have redundant Titan, so if they're playing discard spells, this will play around it. We also have Tolaria West to potentially search for Engineer's Explosives if we need it, and we already have a Cavern of Souls to interact, well, to prevent counter magic. I would say interact, but I don't really consider that interaction. We can prevent counter magic with our Cavern of Souls. We do have Titan. We have Titan mana, and we have several untapped sources here, so, like, it's not the worst hand, but on 5, I definitely think that we have to keep this. So we end up keeping, and I believe we ship the Cavern of Souls, actually. Let's see. So we consider shipping a redundant Primeval Titan and the Tolaria West, since it's going to be difficult to transmute this Tolaria West. Even though we have the blue sources in play, we'd have to top deck another bounce land, or perhaps like an Amulet, so we could play out the Tolaria West and then play Growth Chamber into it and have the mana to float before we bounce the Tolaria West. But I think shipping Tolaria West is not going to be a terrible choice here. This leaves us with the maximum number of untapped sources, and then we ship the redundant Titan here because we need to keep all of our lands for casting Primeval Titan. But then we rethink this decision, and the question is, are we going to get more value out of our Talari West or our Cavern of Souls, right? If our plan is to cast Titan off of this Garen Brig, which is currently looking like that's the plan, if we don't top deck a land, it also might be the fastest route to casting Titan, then the Cavern of Souls is not really doing much for us. Whereas Talaria West, if we are able to draw an amulet or a blue source like a gemstone mine or a breeding pool or something, then the Talaria West could potentially become a Summoner's Pact for a 3-drop if we want it, or a Pact of Negation, as that one is in the main deck. So I rethink this decision and decide to ship back Primeval Titan and Talaria West. Primeval Titan and Cavern of Souls instead. And that's what we go with. So we lead off on Talaria West and Pass, of course, trying to get our tap land out of the way. And our opponent plays Cavern of Souls, Naming Human, and Noble Hierarch. So obviously this is terrible news. Humans is a really bad matchup. This hand can't even remotely beat Meddling Mage. I guess we could transmute for Engineered Explosives, but that's a long ways away. So Humans is really bad news, but we have to make do with what we have and hope that perhaps they don't have the right interaction for this matchup. So we continue playing on, top deck in Azusa, which is not a bad one, Play our other tap land and pass back. I suppose there's some merit to potentially playing Growth Chamber there. Seeing as we're going to play Azusa and get an additional land drop this upcoming turn anyways, they don't have, like, Aether Vial for putting in a Reflector Mage at instant speed, and I don't think they would want to do that just on this Azusa anyways. But they don't have that even as an option, so we're pretty certain that this Azusa is going to stick, so I guess it doesn't matter what we play here. We just want to get one of our tap sources out of the way. So, but we could have played Growth Chamber and picked up Talaria West and then just played lands the regular old way off of Forest and Growth Chamber in play. Ultimately, it makes no real difference here, so. And we see a Champion of the Parish, which is going to represent a unfortunate clock for us. And a Meddling Mage naming Dryad of the Elysian Grove, which I think is a very interesting name from our opponent. If we have a Dryad, cutting us off of casting it means that we can't set up any kind of Valid Cut shenanigans to be able to wipe their board. It ensures that they have a clock. So that does make sense. Luckily, we are not reliant on Dryad here, as we do have Azusa and a Titan, so not looking bad so far. If they don't have a second Meddling Mage, then this hand may be able to pan out. So we're going to go ahead and we draw an Explorer, but the problem with casting Explorer here would be that we don't necessarily get to cast Titan this upcoming turn. We can play Growth Chamber after the Explorer, pick up a Garen Brig, and play Garen Brig. I guess we would actually have Titan this upcoming turn, but regardless, I think it's going to be better to get Azusa into play here as a potential blocker. So we do go with the Azusa. We play out our land drops here. And we hope for the best. Second Meddling Mage kind of just ends the game on the spot. But anyways, we'll just see what they play. Second Champion is actually not too problematic. And this looks like a Phantasmal Image, and it is. And we do see a second Meddling Mage, so we don't really have any outs. I guess we could draw a bounce land to pick up and transmute Talaria West, but then we're still 2 turns away from Titan, because the next turn we have to play Explosives on 2 and blow it up to get rid of the Meddling Mages, and then the turn after we have to play our Titan. So even with a Chump Blocker here, it's looking like our Titan is going to be too slow. Get Noble Hierarch, so we're taking a huge chunk of damage from the Champion of the Parish, and in fact our opponent can even afford to swing in with Meddling Mage because Azusa's not threatening to trade with this one. So, although it's not like we have a Dryad to capitalize on trading with Meddling Mage anyways, we just have to take the 7 damage here. Not blocking with Azusa because it lets us potentially do interesting things with a bounce land. And they're likely going to be hitting us for a large, more amount of damage than 5 this upcoming turn if they play like a Lieutenant or something. Although if they play Lieutenant, we're probably just dead anyways. But regardless, the idea is that we might be able to get a little more value out of our block here. I guess I could see firing off the block on the Champion anyways, but ultimately, it doesn't really make a difference. We just have to top deck Engineered Explosives here, or we're dead. We top deck Garen Brig, So we'll explore. Top deck another land. No engineered explosives, no bounce lands, no nothing. So now we're basically just chump blocking. They crack Canopy and play a Phantasmal Image, of course copying Meddling Mage again, which is not the best for us. I mean, it's not the worst because our out would still be engineered explosives, but we're on a very fast clock, so we may not even have the time to play in crack engineered explosives. If we play in crack at this upcoming turn, we'll be short of casting Titan anyways. So yeah, we basically just needed to hit engineered explosives that turn, or the bounce land to transmute, and we didn't. So there's not much we can do this game. We'll go ahead and take our chump block this turn. Of course, the last turn not blocking paying off here, since we are preventing an additional point of damage from the Champion of the Parish. What's going on here? Because last turn it was 5 damage, and now it's 6, so I guess we gained a little bit of value from choosing not to block. And we also got to play out both of the lands we drew, although I think we would have been able to do that anyways with the Explorer, so whatever. Gained a life point. That's not nothing. We top deck our Savior, Ancient Stirrings. Don't know what that could find. Cast it anyways, just to see if there's some kind of line that we're missing. We see Selesnya Sanctuary and these 4 cards. Take the Sanctuary, since that'll let us pick up Solari West, but of course if we use the blue to transmute and find engineered explosives, then we're not going to be able to play explosives. I guess we could play explosives on 1, perhaps? We could play explosives on 1 and blow up the champions and the nobles and take 6. Actually, that would still be lethal, so yeah. Nothing we can do here. That is just game. So, we concede. And game 1 goes to our humans opponent. Not surprising, we did actually mulligan to 5 there, so humans is a rough matchup anyways. So let's go ahead and look at game 2. Okay, so I have pulled up game 2 here. I'm going to go ahead and take a peek at the sideboard and talk about the sideboarding. I'm going to go back to the deck list and reconfigure it so that we can see what was brought in, what was brought out, and I will see you guys in just a moment. Okay guys, so after game 1, our deck configuration goes like this. We bring out these cards that you see on the right here, and we bring in these cards here. So we're bringing in Beast Within, Dismembers, not all the Beast Withins, I should mention, just 2 of them, 3 Dismembers, a Tireless Tracker, and an Engineered Explosives, and we're taking out all the Explorers, a Bajuka Bog, 1 Summoner's Pact, and 1 Pact of Negation. So the reasoning behind these particular changes, obviously, first and foremost on our minds are going to be Meddling Mage locks, where we're going to need Dismember to break up like a Meddling Mage naming Engineered Explosives, or potentially just a lone Meddling Mage naming Titan. We can Dismember it and then start going off with our good old Colossal Dreadmaw plus. But yeah, so we bring in Dismember for that. And Beast Within as well, because Beast Within can target a Meddling Mage and give them a creature if, worst case scenario, but it can also target a Phantasmal Image, and the Phantasmal Image, which is almost assuredly going to be copying Meddling Mage, will die in response after being targeted to the Beast Within and counter the Beast Within upon resolution, or fizzle it, or whatever the terminology is nowadays. When I was learning Magic, it was called countered upon resolution, so I don't know if they still use that, but regardless, they won't end up getting the 3/3 Beast if we Beast Within a Phantasmal Image that is copying something, so it's definitely a little bit of an upside to that, but regardless, like I said before, this matchup really comes down to whether or not we can get out from underneath a Meddling Mage lock. If we can, then we'll probably be able to win, and if we can't, then we'll probably lose. So we definitely bring in some Beast Withins to interact with that, although it's not the most efficient removal spell, so we're only bringing in 2. There's nothing else that we really want to hit with Beast Within anyways. I guess maybe an Aether Vial, but again, giving them a 3/3 body is not insignificant. They can definitely clock us. We also bring in a Tireless Tracker. We do have 1 in the main board, but we want access to Tireless Trackers here because in the absence of an answer to Meddling Mage, it's possible to land a tracker and get some card advantage value out of it, potentially make some blocks with it, but most importantly, it'll potentially draw us into our answers to Meddling Mage. It'll let us convert the lands that we have into card draw, so that in a small window of time, we'll be able to potentially spike a Dismember or an Explosives off the top. It's not something that is ever going to be named by Meddling Mage, so you know for sure when you play it that it's going to be good. It's not particularly good against Reflector Mage, but, I mean, this is a bad matchup, so you have to do what you can. And then, of course, we bring in the second Explosives, because this card is insane against humans. If they play a Meddling Mage naming Dryad and a Meddling Mage naming Primeval Titan, you just play Explosives on 2, blow it up, and then go about your business as usual. It's definitely one of the few ways that we have access to winning this matchup. The things that we cut are over here. Explorers, Bojuka Bog, Summoner's Pact, Pact Negation. So the reasoning behind this is Explore is really slow in this matchup. It does let us cantrip and potentially try to find answers, but we don't really have a whole lot of time for Explore. There are even some humans opponents that'll have Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, which would tax Explore, make it a 3-mana spell. Definitely not something I'm particularly interested in. I could see maybe having Explore over a Grazer or 2, just because we don't want redundant Grazers as top decks, since Explore, like Tracker, will actually help us potentially cantrip into a answer, but in general, Explore is just not particularly good, so we side that one out. We side out a Bojuka Bog as well, because obviously humans doesn't care about their graveyard or our graveyard at all, and it's just an into the battlefield tap, non-green source. Definitely one of the worst lands in our deck in this matchup, so easy cut, easy cut. We trim one Summoner's Pact because our opponent is actively trying to stop us from casting the things that we would try to Summoner's Pact for in the first place, namely Primeval Titan and Dryad of the Elysian Grove. If we can't play these two, there's no real reason to be casting Summoner's Pact, since it'll tap us out the turn after, and even if they don't lock us out of casting, say, a Primeval Titan, it's still possible for them to Reflector Mage and bounce our Primeval Titan and then Time Walk us with the Summoner's Pact pay for during our next turn. Although I guess Reflector Mage would Time Walk us anyways, but regardless, having to tap out the turn after means that we wouldn't necessarily be able to, for example, put a Dryad into play to start doing stuff with Valakut or whatever. So Summoner's Pact is definitely going to be a weak one here. We'd rather just have a natural copy of Primeval Titan, I think. It's a little close. I could even see maybe keeping the 4th pack and siding out one Primeval Titan, but regardless, I think that it's pretty safe to side one pact out. If you're able to get even a single Titan into play, then you're looking fantastic. So, and then the Pact of Negation, because not only does our opponent play both Aether Vial and Cavern of Souls, we also actively don't really want to be casting this. There's nothing that we can really pack. All of their most important spells are at 1 and 2 mana, so Pact of Negation not looking its best here. I should note, it's possible that Force of Vigor and Reclamation Sage are playable in this matchup. Reclamation Sage more so than Force. In fact, in hindsight, I think perhaps bringing in the Reclamation Sage and cutting something else, maybe like a second Pact or a Stirrings or something, I don't know. Regardless, I think bringing in Reclamation Sage does make some sense. Being able to kill a Aether Vial with Rec Sage and then chump block with it, or potentially threaten to trade with a creature with Reclamation Sage, it's quite good. I don't think I would bring in Force, just because, unlike Merfolk, Humans is a deck that's not particularly reliant on their vials. Merfolk doesn't often play things like Meddling Mage, so in the absence of Vial, Merfolk tends to be a little too slow against Amulet, but that is not at all the case against humans. Even without a Meddling Mage, a human's draw could be like, turn 1, Champion of the Parish. I was like, what is the name of that card? Turn 1 Champion, turn 2 Champion Noble Hierarch, turn 3 Mantis Rider, and that might be fast enough to just get us. Merfolk doesn't really have any draws like that, so we're not really dead set on trying to get rid of Vials. Against Merfolk, killing a Vial with a Force of Vigor might make sense because it buys us a ton of time. Against humans, not so much. That said, the fact that Reclamation Sage is able to block makes it an interesting suggestion. I definitely could see bringing this one in. In fact, I think in the future I probably would. I probably just overlooked it here in this particular matchup. But regardless, that's enough talking about the sideboard. Let's go ahead and see how the game plays out. Alright, so we are back in the game. Of course, we lost game 1, so we are choosing to be on the play here. And we are greeted with the following hand. As far as hands go against humans, this hand is quite good. It's missing a bounce land and a Titan, or a Garenbrig and a Titan, but that's not terribly difficult to come by. It has turn 1 Amulet. Amulet is very important against humans in that as soon as your Titan resolves, you want it to be able to, for example, get Talaria West and transmute for an Engineered Explosives, or be able to immediately attack and then get Fielded at online, things like that. Amulet is quite valuable in the humans matchup. We also have Grazer as an early blocker and a way to ramp into Dryad on turn 2 if we decide to play around something that could destroy Amulet. I don't think humans is playing anything like that, but regardless, just having an extra piece of ramp and a way to get some life points back from our opponent going to be useful. Of course, Dryad is going to be extremely key here. If we're able to get Dryad and play with a Valakut, then our human's opponent cannot establish and keep a board. And then Dismember to deal with a Meddling Mage, because like I said, that card is stupid in this matchup. So we do, in fact, keep this hand. And we lead on, I believe, turn 1 Amulet. Yep. And we pass it back. Now, we do need to top deck both a land, either a bounce land or a Garenbrig, and a Titan here. So we are asking for a little bit. And our opponent leads on turn 1 Noble. I think that's better for us than turn 1 Vile, since it represents a smaller incremental advantage as far as mana is considered. And we're able to play out our turn 2 Dryad here. We got the bounce land, so we're only one piece away from having a turn 3 Titan here, I believe. We just need to draw the Titan, so we're going to go ahead and throw our Dryad into play here. All the triggers. And we leave the blue source in play to potentially transmute a Talaria West. We throw out this Grazer because it's not doing anything better in our hand. It's an additional land into play, so if they have like a Reflector Mage to bounce Dryad, we can just play Gruul Turf and play Titan immediately. And our opponent plays, wait for it, Meddling Mage, which is not great news, but thankfully we have the answer. We could potentially dismember this Meddling Mage on our opponent's instep, and I definitely think that there's some merit to that. However, if we don't draw Titan, there's no reason to take the extra 4 life. We're going to have access to 8 mana this upcoming turn by playing Gruul Turf twice with the Dryad in play, so that'll give us plenty of mana to pay 1, even 2 mana on a Dismember to kill the Meddling Mage and then play Titan. So there's no real reason to go ahead and fire off this Dismember now. So instead, we just untap and draw. And swing and a miss on that Titan. Things are starting to look a little worse here. One other thing I should mention is that by not playing the Dismember immediately, we also give our opponent the window to cast a Phantasmal Image. And if we're able to dismember the Dryad, what am I saying? If we're able to dismember the Meddling Mage in response to a Phantasmal Image on the stack, then they would either have to copy their Noble Hierarch or our Dryad, and that's infinitely better than them copying Meddling Mage. Let's say we were to dismember this Meddling Mage right now, then our opponent could go land, second Meddling Mage, Phantasmal Image, that Meddling Mage. So by waiting on the Dismember, we give our opponent the chance to potentially make a misplay. And I mean, I'm not saying that playing Phantasmal Image into a possible Dismember is a misplay. It probably is not, but at least it gives us the option to play around that. And we see a Kitesail Freebooter from our opponent, which is going to force us to go ahead and snap off this Dismember. Otherwise, they'll be able to take it with the Freebooter. So we were planning on casting this one on the Meddling Mage anyways, so we go ahead and get full value out of our Dryad, giving us all the colors of mana, and we fire off this Dismember on the Meddling Mage. And here I want to stress that if we top deck a Titan, we basically just win. Our opponent can't beat a Titan on this particular board. I guess they could have land second Meddling Mage naming Primeval Titan. They Dismember our Dryad. Unexpected. To be honest, I'm not sure that I even pegged Dismember as a card that humans plays in the sideboard. Seems like a weird one to have in this matchup. Not that it's bad. Regardless, it doesn't change anything. We still have Titan mana this upcoming turn, so we just need to top deck Titan. And we top deck Radiant Fountain. That one is not good. I mean, we'll play it. We get to gain some life out of it, I suppose. But we definitely wanted to see a Titan off the top here. It's been a few draw steps. We did side out one Summoners Pact, so I don't know. Maybe you shouldn't side out any Summoners Pacts in this matchup. I don't know. That's pretty results oriented. So if we had top deck a Titan here, then we probably would have had an excellent shot at this game. As is, it's still not looking the worst until our opponent floats blue and white, and that can only mean one thing. Unfortunately for us. Meddling Mage. Naming Primeval Titan. This one's pretty impossible for us to beat. Now we have to draw a Engineered Explosives, or Beast Within, or a second Dismember, which we only have 3 of anyways, to kill the Meddling Mage before we go and play a Primeval Titan. And I spoke too soon because our opponent has a second Meddling Mage. There's 2 Dismembers in the deck and 2 Beast Withins, but there's also 2 Engineered Explosives. So I guess by playing the second Mage on Primeval Titan, they're playing to higher likelihood, since there is a possibility that we're playing like a Beast Within as well as a Dismember. So I think I understand why they made this play now. Yeah, there's not much we can top deck here, in all honesty. I guess there's Engineered Explosives, and that's about it. Field of the Dead, not really going to do it. We can play that one. We're 1 land away from triggering Field of the Dead, which is not bad. That represents a potential way to get some zombies to block. And we do see a Phantasmal Image copying Meddling Mage. So they've got the little prison lock very neatly set up here. This one's naming Engineered Explosives, so clearly they decided that they wanted to play around some other outs that we have access to. And I think that's a good choice. We go ahead and snap off a block here with our Grazer. Just gain 2 life here. But yeah, we're really under the ropes here. We need a card in our deck that does not currently exist in our deck. It's not like we're playing Fire Spout or anything, so. Yep. So we draw and play a Dryad. We play it out before playing Gruul Turf, which is definitely a huge misplay. If they have another Dismember to kill our Dryad, then it's going to deny us 1 more zombie token, so a little misstep on my part. And in fact, we do see our opponent immediately snap off a Dismember on this Dryad, so we get punished for making a little bit of a suboptimal play there. I mean, it's small potatoes, though. We need to answer these Meddling Mages, or we're going to lose anyways, so we keep a bounce land in hand for potential Valakut shenanigans if we get to that point. We see a Mirran Crusader from our opponent's side. It's a protection from black and green card, so this one faces up nicely against a Field of the Dead, making zombie tokens and our various green blockers. So our opponent's just playing out their cards here. And yeah, I mean, we just need to top deck something. Dismember is not bad. We'll be able to use that one to answer the Meddling Mage on Explosives. So if we top deck Explosives, then we can finally break up this little prison lock. But then so in other words, our out is to top deck exactly Explosives into Primeval Titan, which is pretty low. I guess Summoner's Pact as well would work, but regardless, chance is not looking so great here. Pass it back. They crack a Canopy. And they find and play Thalia's Lieutenant. That one's a disaster because now this board is completely out of control. We can block a Kitesail Freebooter, I suppose, but... And they choose not to attack with everything because they don't want us to be able to double block a Meddling Mage here. And I don't blame them. Even if they were to attack with, say, a single Meddling Mage, one of the 2 on Primeval Titan, then they could get blown out by Dismember, the other Meddling Mage on Primeval Titan, plus a Titan off the top. So they very expertly play around that one and send in just the Crusader. We obviously can't block, so we're just going to take the 8, as it were. And we are back to top decks on our side. Land, not fantastic. This is another blue source, I suppose, for transmuting Tolario Est, but, I mean, there's a mage naming Engineered Explosives. I guess we could Dismember the Engineered Explosives Mage, Transmute and Play Meddling Mage. But, I mean, again, things are not really panning out for us here. We pass it back. Our opponent swings with their Crusader, and we take 8 again. Not much that we can do about it. And by that I mean there's nothing we can do about it. And our opponent plays Champion and Gaddock. So here, the Gaddock is basically just another Meddling Mage on Engineered Explosives, since non-creature spells with X and their cost can't be cast. So this one's going to prevent us from playing Explosives as well. I think from this point, we have no outs, so we top deck another land, and as you might expect, we are dead here. And this is kind of the reason why the humans matchup is so bad. And also, it exemplifies why Aether Vial is not particularly important on the human side of this matchup, is because we just never had a window to cast a Titan. Even if we had drawn a Titan or an Explosives here, it would have made no difference. Like, we had no outs at the very end here. But for the longest time, our opponent wasn't really clocking us. And in a situation like that against Merfolk, I think that we'd be very well set up to win there. I guess the only thing Merfolk can really have is sideboarded in Chalice of the Void on 0 to counter Summoner's Pact. That kind of interacts, but even that one is pretty loose. So, but against humans, they can take all the time that they want, as long as they can hide behind some Meddling Mages. I mean, they'll find a way to kill us eventually, and Thalia's Lieutenant definitely makes their Meddling Mage lock even more potent, because now we can't block with zombies. They can start attacking with their Meddling Mages, and it goes pretty south from there. So, regardless, sort of a disappointing match. Mold of 5 into just a Game 2 loss, when there were a few moments where we could top deck Primeval Titan, and it just didn't really work out for us. But overall, still not the worst. But yeah, that was the matchup. Let me know what you guys think. If you think that there are any other plays that could have been made, or if you have any secret tech against humans. Like, Fire Spout is good against humans to some extent, but it is possible for them to grow their team outside of Fire Spout range. I guess I should mention as well, some suggest playing Pyroclasm in the Amulet sideboard when you're splashing red instead of Fire Spout, and it is a 2-mana spell, but the main reason why Fire Spout sees play over the Pyroclasm is specifically because of the situation we just saw, where our opponent has a board of Meddling Mages, and the first thing you want to see off the top of your deck is a Pyroclasm, and then your opponent draws and plays a Thalia's Lieutenant. All of their mages become 3/3s, and there's nothing a Pyroclasm can do about that whatsoever. All of a sudden, Pyroclasm becomes a dead top deck, whereas in situations like that, a Fire Spout is still very live. So that's the main reasoning for that. Regardless, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and call that a video there. Again, I apologize for the format. Recording in past tense like this is not really my particular specialty. I don't particularly prefer it. And things will be returning to normal for the video this upcoming Monday. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. This is Red Face Menace, signing off.